Welcome to That Worldview podcast and another episode of Talking Through Things. Today we have a missionary, Justin Dye from Papua New Guinea, and I just met him and we had a great conversation after church today, and I kind of felt like he should be our next guest for the podcast. So here we go, Justin. It's good to have you on the podcast.
Good to be here. Like you said, name's Justin Dye. I work in Papua New Guinea as a missionary, and I've been there for 6 years. We work with the Chad Wells family along with Melanie Ellis, both missionaries that your church supports. And then we've got a couple single ladies on deputation to come work with us full time. Libby Russell and my sister Brianna Dye, and we just got a lot of irons in the fire over in Pangaea and in the Southern Highlands. We work with a lot of the pastors that were trained by former missionaries, Brother Wells, Dennis Wells, Chad's dad, and Brother Ted Mullins, and got a lot of outreaches. We got a school and a Bible Institute and a clinic that we've got off the ground and we're going to add to this term. And we've got outreach down in kind of the lowland, river, swampy areas of New Guinea. That's all new to us, and keeping a whole bunch of other stuff going. So it's super exciting. I grew up in church as far as I can remember. My parents got saved when I was 2 years old. And so really ever since that time, our family still to this day really hasn't been out of church. There's not been like a backsliding period, which is a blessing to us and a blessing to our family now. My parents actually attend our sending church, so it's easy to go back and visit and reconnect with them. But at the age of probably 4 and 5 and 6, I could have probably given the gospel, right? Growing up in Sunday school, listening to that, watching all the, right? I had my flannel graph theology all down, right?
I forgot about those flannel graphs.
Classic. It's a staple.
Yes.
And so, I'm sitting there, and I was one of those kids where every once in a while, a teacher would lead in a prayer. Did anybody get saved? I'd raise my hand, all that kind of stuff. But on a Wednesday night when the pastor, as far as I can remember, wasn't preaching anything about salvation or getting saved or anything like that, God was kind of dealing with me through the service. And then, man, I just remember as soon as the invitation hit, it was like, okay, I need to make a decision about this. I had already sat through more than a few invitations, knowing God was dealing with me, but not really wanting to respond.
Yeah.
And so my dad, he was up in our sound booth, one of those back of the top of the church kind of deals. I asked him to come down. He took me aside and led me to the Lord. And man, ever since then, that part of my life has been settled and secure and awesome. And then it took another 8 years or so for God to kind of move me in the direction of missions. My dad's retired military, and so I just wanted to go into the Air Force and fly F-22s. I was ready, by the time I would have been through flight school and all that stuff, it would have been right about the time they were commissioning that airframe. And so I had straight A's, and I was involved in community stuff that I needed so I could try and get an Air Force appointment and to the Air Force Academy, I should say. And the summer when I was 15 years old, 2005, my youth pastor set up a missions trip to go see a missionary named Craig Ledbetter. He's still over there in Ireland, working in Southern Ireland, and I'd never been really out of the country, just to Canada. That doesn't really quite count.
Yeah.
Not when you're only going to the falls. It doesn't count. You're still within eyesight of the sacred homeland. So, signed up for that, raised money for it, went over, and before I had gone, the pastor's daughter, I think she's like 10 years older than I am. She was teaching at the Christian school that I was attending, and she heard that I was going on a mission trip, and she said, "Oh, well, that'll change your life." And little did I know what that would mean, right? And she was right. She didn't know what that would mean for us either, or for our family, or for me, or any of that. But went over there, saw Brother Ledbetter, and saw God working in a way that was visible and powerful, and in a way that was more exciting than what was going on at the church that we were attending. It's not where we're at now. This church, when I was a teenager, it's closed down now. It kind of went under. But they were preaching right and all that stuff, but God wasn't moving. And I go outside of the U.S., right? Patriotic military family, go see Ireland and go see, uh, you know, completely different place. Not third world, but it's different.
It's different. Yeah.
It's different. And then to see God work and people getting saved, and I'm going, oh, we're missing something at our church.
Like, so we don't have everything I thought, you know?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And my world got a whole lot bigger. Basically, from that trip, right after that is when our family moved to Western New York to Buffalo, where we're at now, and to our church. And I went from a church, like I said, it was about 2 years from dying, to a church that missionaries were in once a month at least, and coming and presenting and supporting missions. And a first missions conference ever happened later that year. And that first year we were there, all kinds of exciting stuff. And God basically used that and then the new environment to challenge me about, are you going to plan your own life out or not? And so that summer of my 16th year, it wasn't like all at once at an altar, but it was a series of decisions. But I finally had the courage or the decision made where I talked to my parents and talked to my pastor, and then took another couple of years for God to direct us to New Guinea. But here we are, and it's going awesome. It's going great.
That's really cool. God just knows how to move just so.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, right? So God, from my parents' point of view, is moving them around the country for them. And that was the first time we had changed geographical location where I could say, oh, God was doing something for me too. Not just me, but for me too.
Yeah,
So,
that's really cool. That's awesome. I really like, missionary stories and seeing what, at least the beginning part of it, what God does, how he moves. And God has to kind of break us of our idols first before he can give us the plan,
Yeah.
or at least the first step.
Sometimes it doesn't feel like an idol. And then, you just get told, man, this is it. You got to put it down. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Had I known, I would have done this months ago.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. That's really cool. So we were talking earlier. We were kind of talking about missions and missions philosophy, and you had talked about mission journeys or something of that nature. And I was looking at your prayer card earlier. Like you kind of mentioned it earlier. You have a lot of stuff on there that you guys do, and you actually don't necessarily strike me as like what I guess I would think of, or what probably most would think of as a traditional missionary.
Sure.
You guys you're doing a lot, and it's a lot of things that are kind of outside the traditional purview. And I really like that. And then when we were talking about missions philosophy earlier, I was like, yeah, like, you have a lot of the same, I guess, ideas and stuff like that.
Sure.
Too.
Yeah.
So I kind of explain like the mission journeys that you guys are that you're kind of studying, getting into, how you came to that conclusion, and what does that look like for you guys right now?
Okay. Well, I guess full disclosure, right? I do work with Brother Chad Wells, and he had several of the things on the back of our prayer card already started, and we've come alongside and kind of buttressed some of those ministries, and then some have started in the time that we've been there, or maybe they used to be a thing a decade ago, and they kind of got revived now that we got some people here. But really, Brother Wells challenged me in our first year, especially. He basically said, you need to get with God and get some vision for what God wants you to do. And until you get that, I have enough vision for all of us. So let's go. And, so I be in team missions, right? I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying. I'm not going to be offended by that and take it right as the blow on the chin that I could, but also I'm going to let it edify me a little. So, right. So when you see guys on deputation, and I said this too, right? What's the thing that's included in all of our presentations? We're going to go win souls, and we're going to go plant churches, and we're going to train men, right? The three pillars. And those are certainly rooted in Bible.
Right. For sure.
And right. And for any church to flourish, right, both in the States and abroad, they need to be involved in soul winning, and they need to, I believe, be involved in some kind of effort to start churches in and around them, right? Church planting should be a facet of church ministry, because it's not just a foreign country thing. It's I'm sure there's places in and around Houston that could use a church that, right, where they could add new members. We see that with Spanish churches, right? Yeah. Spanish churches get started. We use the same building. You just rotate in and out, but it's a different congregation, right? They don't fellowship with this body. They're meeting in the same church. They're still Baptistic and all that. and you got to train men. If you don't do that, right, I think the biggest evidence of not training men is currently happening, at least our side of the Mississippi. We're seeing a lot of that pastoral search, right, where churches have
Yeah.
a pastor retire or
Hmm.
leave or move on or take another position or bow out of ministry, both shamefully and respectfully, right? It happens both
Yep.
ways. And then there's not a guy. And then that church goes a few years without a pastor. And we've kind of put the training of men onto Bible colleges in our country, at least,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
generally. And man, it's a local church thing.
Yeah. I totally
And
agree.
if you let that go, you start seeing these cracks form, or you
Hmm.
get the swap a pastor every 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. You just swap pastors with somebody else, and
Yeah.
man, there's a lot of problems with that. We're obviously engaged in that in New Guinea because we don't want the same problems, and the same problems will happen if we don't stay engaged in that. But beyond that, right? What does God want you to do,
Hmm.
right? Like every church should be involved in those things. But man, churches are not just built by the people that make up that congregation, but they're built for their communities. And God uses different churches in different ways. And pastors have to be sensitive to that. And so we carried that into missions, right? What does God want us to do where we're at? What can we do in Pangaea? What do we need to be doing here? And for a time, the previous generation of missionaries, man, they planted churches like crazy and trained men like crazy. And so what we've seen now is for us to help those churches, because we don't necessarily need to wield any apostolic power, right? We don't
Right.
really have a right to come in and remove a guy, even if he's doing something wrong. That's the church's accountability that
Hmm.
they've got to wield there.
Hmm.
How can we help? Does God still need missionaries in PNG? Does
Hmm.
God still need people to go? Or can the pastors take it? And he's given us a few ministries. So one of those things is 100% it's the Bible Institute. And most of our students are pulled from, at least the 3 years that I taught, they're pulled from Brother Wells's church that he's working with in Lama Sawmill. And then his son Derek's got a church plant that they're working with. Same tribe, but about 20 minutes away. You just got to go around the ridge on a road. And some of the Bible school students came from there, and then some from my church. And then we had a couple pastors that they brought some of their own Timothys in because they didn't have anywhere to put them, and they weren't really willing to take the time to teach them. So they said, "Well, we'll come," and we have those men teach with us. And then as part of our school, we also train teachers to go back to their churches and start with their pastors, basically pre-K and kindergarten. Those
Nice.
teachers have to be with us in our Bible school so that we can get a little bit of our mindset and what we think they ought to be like in them. So,
Yeah.
that's a huge way that we're prepping for the future and keeping stuff going. You saw a printing ministry there. We've got offset printers Brother Wells brought over, and man, we print tracts, we print books. All of our Bible school material is available to any pastor that wants to teach it in their church. It's already in Pigeon, so they can use it and take it, man. Go do what God wants you to do with it. We've printed Bibles on that, and we've printed like songbooks and stuff on that. And then we've got our school, and like a part of our school is to reach our immediate area, and we've got 200 students. That's doubled from a couple years ago. It could grow if we have more teachers and more facilities. Sky's the limit there.
Yeah.
And
Sky's the limits everywhere, it
right,
seems like.
right, exactly. I mean, there's no shortage of children in Pangaea, so
Yeah.
right, like we could do that. But then also that vision to see other schools get started. If you're a pastor and you live an hour from us and you see how this is working, and you want that, and you've got no way to start that, well, send us some teachers, and we'll train you in the admin, and we'll train you in what you need to be that ACE school and get all the same benefits and credit, and we'll train your teachers.
Hmm.
Give them to us for 3 years, and then you can have them the rest of their lives if that's what God wants.
Yeah.
And awesome stuff like that. Running youth camps, running marriage conferences, stuff that just helps those churches without us getting back down into the nitty gritty, elbows
Yeah.
deep in local churches.
No, I totally agree. One of the things I like that you said, you were talking about earlier when it comes to training men
Mhm.
is something that I found that I try to be sensitive of is I think there's been this massive focus on just making churches, right? It's like you
Right.
go, how many, because it is kind of a bragging right for a missionary. How many churches have you built,
Uh-huh.
like, but like, when you go through Acts and all that, something I found very interesting is before churches were multiplied, it was disciples were multiplied.
Hmm.
And I think like what you said earlier, that's what's really lacking is there's almost too much of a focus on just starting a church, and a lot of times they get started a little bit artificially.
Hmm.
It's like so in India right now that's happened. One of my
Hmm.
mentors went over there, and for some reason, some of them, and they're well intentioned men over
Hmm.
there, but a missions mentor of mine, he went over there and he was like looking at what they were doing and all that, and they consider a roof over a plot of land a church,
Sure.
you know. And so, they were telling us we have like 40 missionaries, 40 churches started, and we're like, wow, that's a lot. And coming from, I grew up with Hindus, and I told you that earlier and stuff. I'm like, that's crazy. And so he went over there, but come to find out, they're not actually churches. They're just, there is like someone who has a filling, I guess, the office of a pastor. Like he's got his name, he calls himself a
Oh
pastor,
yeah.
but there's nothing there.
Right.
It's like two ladies show up for a Sunday meeting and bang, they got a church, kind of deal.
Yeah. Well,
But there's no training of men.
our valley, so we've got a valley of 24,000 people. It might have gone up in the last few years with birth rates and stuff, but you know, right in that ballpark, we've got about 45 established Baptist churches, a couple church plants. We've got probably 40 of those have pastors in it. There's a few that have started that pastoral search because their pastors have died or retired or moved on or
Mm-hmm.
something. But most of them are pastored. Most of them are that first generation from Brother Mullins and Brother Wells, and then a few other missionaries that kind of added one or two here or there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're still planting churches because God led that way. And I mean, good stuff's
Hey,
happening from that.
if God brings it about, yeah.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
But I was probably about 40 minutes from where I live, out of our valley, actually right down the road from one of Brother Ted Mullins's old stations. And there's a Baptist church. I mean, like you can almost see it from where I was at. I was at a fuel station. So I'm just filling up my Land Cruiser, getting ready to drive back to Pangaea, coming up from Mount Hagen. And a guy stops me and he says, I think you're a missionary, right? Yeah, I'm a missionary. I live in Pangaea. I'm a new missionary. It was in our first year. And he said, we've been praying for a missionary. Okay, great. Yeah, that's fantastic. Why are you praying for a missionary? He said, well, we have a church building. The only thing we need is windows, but we would let you come and be our missionary if you bought those windows, and then we'll have our church there. And so much of at least our corner of New Guinea is like that, where village leaders, or maybe not even a leader in the village, a family in the village will want to bring a denomination in it. Honestly, it doesn't matter which denomination they bring in because that's looked at as a status symbol of we brought a church in. And those kinds of doors are open, and you can follow each and every one of those and go preach, and you'll most likely in our country see people truly get saved, right? They're very sensitive to the gospel. They're very sensitive to the Holy Spirit. And uh, at the same time, it's like, does God want us here or
Yeah.
somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Paul emphasized to Timothy, find faithful men,
Yes.
right? And then
Yep.
commit what you've learned to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the faithful man will be able to teach other people after that process has happened.
Yeah.
And it's so easy as missionaries to go, well, I'll let God handle who's faithful or not. Maybe they got to build their faithfulness. And that's certainly true.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me that in our time in New Guinea, not very long at all, but long enough to start seeing, okay, there's places where God wants you because time of life, certain families are ready, certain men are ready. And we've focused on men and husband and fatherhood and all that stuff, and have built a fairly balanced church in a small village. It's a village that doesn't really matter, but uh, ultimately, like our church is healthy because of that. And we've gone through struggles, like trying to counsel through marriage stuff and family stuff, and that's
Par
still
for
a
the
struggle.
course.
Yeah, absolutely. They think
Yeah.
they're special because they have never seen anybody else go through it, but they're all newly saved. And at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, I'm going, all right, God 100% wanted us here, because 5 years later might have been too late. 5 years earlier was too early. The church that we started had been attempted twice, and by good men, right, and good pastors. There's a pastor who he's at another church and it's doing good. And one of those men who started multiple churches in our valleys, like it wasn't started by a loser, it just wasn't the right time.
Yeah.
But you can see that as I've pulled 5 Bible school students from our church, and I've got more kind of waiting in the wings that we're going to try and get this next time around and get them trained up and see what God would do with them. Because ultimately, right, the church exists to send the truth of the gospel out.
Yep.
And to call people to Christ, and
Mm-hmm.
people do that. Not a edifice, not a cross on the front, not a
Yep.
signboard, none of that.
I'm curious, what is I kind of want to dig more into the emphasis of sending men out. For some reason, I feel like we got to dig there a little bit. So you said you've got a couple young guys that you took on and that are teaching. Is that what you meant by that, or?
Yeah, they're not quite young. They're kind of our age or into their mid 40s. So
Okay.
they're
But
family
they're new
men.
too. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but these guys you're kind of training to be pastors or whatnot.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think 2 of them have expressed that they feel God's leading them into ministry. One of them, he's got some testimony issues from his unsaved life that are going to present a problem, especially in our village, but maybe not in another end of the country. We'll see. But all 3 of them are willing to teach Sunday school or preach for us, and they're actually there right now. The 3 of them are handling pulpit duty and basically kind of acting as the counsel, and then I get other issues forwarded to me that they can't figure out themselves.
Yeah.
Through text, and we'll have video calls and stuff while I'm over here. But man, they're doing great. And like I said, only 2 of them have expressed an interest in the pastorate. One of those 2, he actually got an opportunity to be pulpit supply somewhere and was really excited about it. And so my emphasis and what we've been working on and how I've tried to use them is get them near me as much as possible, to the point where I pay one of them to work on our station with us, give them some good trade skills and give them some good experience, and teach them in, honesty and faithfulness and timeliness and some of those things.
And he spends time with you a lot of time.
Right. Yep. So he gets some of that, and then one of them tried it and didn't fare so well, but it's not like he left church or anything. It just wasn't a good fit for him. And one's employed as a teacher, and I haven't been able to pull him out of that. But yeah, trying to get him involved in stuff, working on ministries, right? There's 2 different ministries. So 2 of those men work together with a kids ministry that Brother Wells and his brothers actually wrote when they were teenagers, and we've expanded it, and Brother Wells has made that available to pastors across New Guinea, across our valley. So I taught that program to them when I was running it. It was doing all right, and then they took it over, and it kind of went down. Some of that is timing with the kids, and some of that is kind of the specialness of the missionary coming and running it, leaving. So we're kind of battling through that and figuring out what to do next and trying to encourage them. But the other man, he and his wife go into the primary school, and they teach the religious instruction class once a week, which the government guarantees that any denomination can teach 1 hour of religious instruction throughout the school year every week. And I used to do that, and I handed it off to him. Man, they've done a great job with that. And so it's just trying to plug them into things, right? Test their faithfulness, teach them about, again, honesty and character and some of these things that maybe they didn't come with, that doesn't come with your salvation, unfortunately. And you got to kind of sharpen that up. But man, they're doing good. And so the future looks bright for them. They're not quite ready to where I'd say, okay, you're ready to be a pastor. We'll send you out or we'll ordain you or something like that, but they're close. And I just need more men to follow that.
So something I thought was really cool is kind of, as you were saying that, is so the first step is, when you brought these men, you're discipling these men effectively. One of the things that I love to see, and you're doing it, is you take these men and you kind of bring them into your life. You spend, like you said, that one guy, you spend time with him. You teach them stuff, you have the conversations, you give them life skills, you test their faithfulness, right?
Right.
You're teaching them, I can only imagine of the stories being from an island, country myself. But you're there and you're pouring into these guys, and it's not just on paper. And that's kind of something I think we are slowly fixing some of the circles here in the U.S. is
Hmm.
discipling someone isn't just a class you go through. It's
Right.
spending time with someone. It's letting them see your lives. Paul says, "Follow me as I follow Christ."
Yeah.
That's a pretty hefty thing to say.
Right.
Like, do I trust that someone could have a good walk with God by looking at my life? It's like, ooh,
Right.
you know.
Well, yeah, we had early disciple before Bible school got rolling, because that's just mainly where I pulled the rest of my
Yeah.
guys into and said,
Mhm.
listen, whether you make it into the pastorate or not, this is going to help you, give you a good foundation. But we were going through discipleship material, but to get them to come to my house and do that with me, uh, man, I fed them. And then when it was football season, we watched a Bills game every night. And they're all into rugby. They watch all that stuff anyways on
Oh,
their
rugby
own.
fan too.
Right. Exactly. Right. And so their culture eats that up. They love it. And I said, let me show you American football. And it helped in multiple ways, right? They sat in my house and they ate food with us. And that always, right? That's just that transcends any
Yep.
culture.
Yep.
And taught them that game. And the nice thing is the recordings I get, all the commercials are chopped out, so they didn't see that. But it also helped them, because one of the things that I get most from my guys, or I used to get a lot more, and they know better now, is that could never work. That's the American way of thinking. We're New Guinean. And you're just presenting them Bible, but because it's new, they're kind of classifying it as, well, that's what
American.
all of you Americans do. And man, when that camera would pan over the crowd at, whatever stadium we were playing at that week, and they're seeing half drunk people and full drunk people and
Yeah.
just craziness, and they're going, oh, I said, right, missionaries are not what you should expect the rest of the country to be. And
Yeah.
by the way, Christian men are not what you should expect the rest of the country to be. And that, believe it or not, right, in such a carnal mechanism and vehicle, that helped them. And it allowed us to have really important conversations on marriage and the family and all that later on.
Well, it showed them that we're human too.
Right.
Like, we're not,
Exactly.
Brother, I know you've heard of him, but I think it was Brother Matt Stallman. He told a story that someone had told him that I really liked to kind of bridge this gap. He says, what do you expect them to think? You get off a multi-million-dollar jet,
Right.
you land in their country, right? You're wearing clothes that they've probably never seen, or if they do, it's through a glass window,
Right.
And then they just have this view because of where you came. You're an alien to them in some ways, when you go to these countries, especially when you go where they don't have that kind of technology or whatnot,
Right.
So you kind of have to, that was great. Football really did that for them. Like, they're humans too.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what was, so with this pattern of mission journeys, what does that, what does that look like for your future? How are you cultivating that, or what's your thought process in
Okay.
that?
So,
And what are the benefits, I guess?
yeah. So we, like I said, are trying to take opportunities, but also have vision for the future. So for instance, with our school, we as a team and basically our school staff has kind of taken on the responsibility of, we use the ACE curriculum. ACE is regionalized across the world. So there's a ministry in Australia that's responsible for distributing it, running the student conventions, running teacher training, establishing new schools, going and inspecting schools to make sure all the standards are right, all that stuff. And the problem is that New Guinea is 80% of their budget. They cover South Pacific Islands, so Vanuatu, Fiji, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, and then they cover Australia. And out of all those countries, we're 80% of their material, because it works really well. It clicks with our bush kids coming out and learning English. Like, there's a lot of good things about it that just works in New Guinea really well. But the problem is all the material gets shipped from the States to Australia. They get taxed there. They're paying to warehouse it until we order it, and then it gets shipped into New Guinea. It gets taxed again. We're paying air freight at that point, and like all kinds of just logistical stuff that adds on price to where we're paying quite a bit more than what you'd pay for that material here in the States. And we've recently been able to arrange that we would handle the New Guinea side, kind of as an arm of that ministry. They'll still legally retain that, but we'll take care of all that legwork and all of that for New Guinea, so that they'll just ship it directly to New Guinea. That drops our material cost by about half. So that helps
That's
our
awesome.
school of 200 kids. But the other thing it does is it puts us and our school staff in a position to influence Christian schools and the ACE Christian schools across New Guinea, which is huge because we can now go in and, preach to these kids where, some schools have a stronger evangelistic stance than others and some don't. And, when we go in, that's just another net or another way to influence that and influence churches or excite our own Baptist churches like, hey, this is the way, let's do it. And, that's going to cost a lot of man hours, but the price is worth it. And so
Mm.
investing in that, one of the other ways that we're able to launch out right now is we've got 2 rivers available to us that were up until 2 years ago. There wasn't a way for us to get there without flying to the capital and busing up another highway that we can't drive to from our side of the island, and then getting on a boat, crossing river, and then starting ministry. Well, now at the best timing, we can get down there in 5 hours on some mining roads that are now connected by one new road. And man, we went down just for some sightseeing, just to see some waterfalls the day after Thanksgiving a couple years back. We went on basically a guy's camping trip, and Brother Wells and I were sitting in a dugout canoe. His sons were there, and we're looking up the bank, looking at these people who, man, they're like back there. They're secluded because they're not on the main highway like much of the Highlands is. They're not on the coast itself. They're up this river, wound back in off another side river called the Mubi River. And man, while we were waiting for them to get some fuel for that boat, we're looking up, and I'm looking at faces, and I mean they're dressed modern, like a modern New Guinean. They're wearing trousers, they're wearing polo shirts and stuff. Maybe a little dirty, maybe a little
Mm.
rough and rugged, but they're not wearing leaves or anything. But man,
Right.
the faces are exactly like the faces that I would see in the pictures Brother Mullins took in the early '90s, and like some of the stuff that made it into his wife's book. I'm going, these are the same. These people are not touched. They're not influenced by this. Like our people, you talk to them, most people tell you what denomination they are before you get too far into the conversation, because they go
Mm.
to a church or they're born in a church, and we're just concerned that you get saved. And you're right.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
kind of similar to here. Here in the States, a lot of people know religion, not as many as used to, but a
Mm.
lot of people do. And down there, it was like fresh slate. And so we go back, and Brother Wells is like, we got to go down. And I'm like, yeah, this is our area saturated. We've got churches. Really, our pastors and our churches need some space to be the pastors and churches they need to and get some autonomy here. And this is a great place for us to go take Bible school students down to, travel with them, and go by river, and where villages are ready, go in, preach, and see if we can't get a couple churches started, see if we can't get some of our Bible school students down there, which would be healthy for them to get them away from home and away from their
Mm.
their home tribe and minister in that way, kind of as a basically it feels a lot more like missions than if I were to move from Buffalo, New York down here to Texas and
Yeah.
start a church. Like,
Yep.
yeah, different culture. It's culture shock light, but not anywhere near to where it could be. But our
Yeah.
tribalism in New Guinea, man, our people are so different from those people that we're going down to where we're gonna have to learn culture and stuff again to a certain extent. So we've got that going on, and our family's responsible for running this clinic that we've got in Pangaea, and we just started that off of our porch. That's started off of medical knowledge that I had to learn. I'm not medically trained at all, but medical knowledge I had to learn to be able to take care of my daughter and now my son. They've got a disease. I got to draw some blood for him and test that blood and send the results back to their endocrinologist in the States so we can keep up on their medicines and stuff like that. But when God equipped us with that knowledge, and then I see people with skin infections and pneumonia, and I'm going, I know what antibiotic you could take,
Yeah.
and I know how to give this to you in a way it's not dangerous for you, or if you have a reaction, man, what to do. So God led us to start that in kind of the end of 2021, or I guess the beginning of 2021, and man, between where we started and now, we've seen over 2,000 patients, and God's gifted us with a clinic building and some medical equipment to go and kind of basically start a level 1 lab there, so we can do some of those checks and do some of those blood tests that they've got to drive 2.5 hours at best to go get. And man, that is opening up influence in a place that's already fairly saturated by, I'll say, the religion, if not the
Right.
gospel. That is opening up a avenue with compassion that we did not have before,
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
able to then again take a Bible school student or take some of our guys with us and say, guys, we're going to go preach here, and then step back and watch them minister and step back and see what God would do. Man, it's awesome. And just trying to do whatever we can to, what what more can we do to get the gospel out? What creative ways can we accomplish this? We start a clinic. All right, we'll start a clinic. All right, we need to build a boat to then go on that river. All right, we'll build it in the workshop and we'll fiberglass that thing. We'll buy a motor and we'll go do it. We need to, we have youth camps, and we'll take our youth camp and preach on service at our Christian youth camp, um, and then load them up on buses, and we'll go distribute 20,000 tracts in the city a couple hours away. And like, that's some of the first time those kids have handed out tracts or tried to witness to people. We had a medical team come and do a visit with us for 10 days, and we did clinics for 8 of those days and saw a couple hundred people and saw like 64 people get saved during that. And I had soul winners ready to see people who had been seen by the medical professionals. And those are all people that, we trained and that are part of our school and a part of our Bible school and part of our churches. And man, seeing pictures of them with their Bibles open, talking to people in villages that they hadn't even been to, and seeing people get saved, man, just any avenue you can to get the gospel out. And then not only that, but provide a spot where someone you've trained can now jump in and practice that, and they
Yeah.
can do their job. And then, man, you see God get all over them, as they see the urgency of what we're doing, and it's starting to click, like, oh, this is why they left America to come here, and this is why they left a name or a job that can make them comfy. Like our parents, our parents, our people know that because we tell them that. But then when they're starting to do that and when they're faced with that, it's like,
Yeah. They see the
oh
need.
man, yeah, it
Yeah.
clicks. And man,
That's really great. I love, you have to give the people like responsibility to do
mhm.
something. You have to give them like, hey, like this isn't Mr. American. This is you. Like you have to do
Right.
this, right? Like there's only so many Americans here that can do this. Like you have to do it. You have
Sure.
to reach your country. No, that's really good. I really
Well, how many churches across America could be accused of, well, we've got a pastor, that's why we pay him, he can do it.
right.
And,
Yeah.
foisting all that responsibility on
Yeah.
him. And it's like, oh no, man,
It
that's not going to work.
ain't gonna work. No, it's as I've thought a lot about. So you've got, like you said, you have these different avenues that you're starting to reach out, and then
Mhm.
I'm guessing you do like different. I don't know how else to call it, like little campaigns where you're like, boom, okay, you're gonna
Yeah.
go do a push on that, and then you do a push on this, and then when you have the time and the resources and all
Right.
that. But seeing the same thing, it's really cool that you guys are doing this. We were talking about it earlier, where you're actually giving help to the people,
Hmm.
right? I've seen so much of that. Even in Fiji, there was several things that Brother Corey Mears did, one of my mentors, where they started a kidney transplant like foundation,
Hmm.
where they would get dialysis in and all that stuff, and that opened some
Hmm.
big doors for them and stuff, that because people were just dying because they didn't have it, and now there was an avenue which brought more access to people to preach, to do all kinds of other stuff. And with you guys bringing in the help that you do to all these people, whether it's through education or whether it's through medical, you're given lots of open doors,
Sure.
you
Yep.
know, and just kind of following those open doors and just faithfully giving the gospel. It's really cool to watch. And then, like you said, having your people do it,
Hmm.
pulling them out, saying, "Here you go, like, you got to do it." I'm right here, but you do it.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. That puts a smile on my face.
Oh man, during that medical week that we had that, so I had prepped the pastors. I kind of left it open, the first pastors to come talk to me. We'll schedule you and we'll try and get this, and very much framed it as an outreach, and very much clearly stated this is not a clinic for your church people. They can always travel in to see me all the time. And to be honest, we're not really going to be treating anything
Mhm,
complicated in a little tent
mhm.
right in the jungle. It's just not
Right.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And so very clear about that. you guys have to supply soul winners. Now, I knew we'd have Bible school students, and I knew that we'd have some of our teenagers there traveling with us, but you guys need to have Bible school, or you guys need to have soul winners ready. And so I got well, our people don't know how to read and write. And I'm going, I'm looking through my Bible, kind of just pretend like, well, I haven't found the verse yet about you need to read or write to be able to give the gospel. And they're like, oh, we hate it when you say things like this. And,
You're taking away our excuses.
Right. And so to their credit, most of those pastors, when we rolled up and started setting everything up, they're still using chalkboards for their Sunday school lessons and for attendance and offering records and stuff like that. And I saw on almost every single one of those church chalkboards, Romans Road verses or soul winning verses that are typical that you'd memorize.
Right.
I'm like, yes, they did it. And usually they'd have like 2 or 3 people sitting with us, and then our people would come in, and there's always people that people are just getting shuffled through so fast that there was always somebody who needed talking to.
Yeah.
And they did really good. We saw great fruit from that. But I had one church where we rolled up and the pastor was like, yep, we don't have anybody. Like, meanwhile, his church is getting in line for the clinic. And I was like, let's start tearing all this down. We'll just go to the next town a day early. And he's used to other missionaries and not me. I'm a little bit more black and white, which hurts me in our culture, right? Like,
but you need it a little bit because they will take a mile.
Yeah, this is the constant pull between my partner and myself. Is he's Mr. Gracious? Let's just let him keep going, and I'm like, no, enough with the foolishness.
Yeah.
Let's go. And so we balanced each other pretty good. But that day only I was there. Brother Wells wasn't there, so I was like, all right, boys, Connor and Derek were there. Tear it all down. Let's go. The doctor's like, what's going on? And I said, just hang on a second. We're rolling out, and the pastor's like, you'd really do that? Absolutely. It's only 2.5 hours to Hog, and I can still have a clinic set up today. We won't waste the day, but we will waste it if the Baptist church in the village is unwilling to reach souls. Like, I do not care about giving out Tylenol to people. I care about people getting saved. And so he finally got a couple people down to start it, but it was like, no, man, you guys just went through a building project. You just upgraded your church building from the one that the missionary donated to you with a sawmill to a cinder block building with, the metal siding and a metal roof. It's so nice, and you can't see the spiritual side of this. Like, no. And ultimately that pastor's a good guy. We love him. He still fellowships with us and does stuff with us, but he needed just a little bit of that push of, no, you're the guy. The missionary's not going to keep doing it for you.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you have to, my dad faced this a lot in Fiji too, was that like, I think because of the medium that we've used in more traditional missions, it's, he has come to us and he's always here to help us and to essentially cater to whatever we need.
Sure.
And he's willing to provide it. So let's just be there. You know,
Right.
it's like, you have to almost train that out of them. Like, no, like we're fellow laborers, right? It's not me laboring and you taking. We're fellow laborers,
Yeah, I made it through about halfway through this last term, right? So we established clinic hours, and unless you were dying or cut open, we're not going to see you just because you have a fever, right? Like, because we're doing other stuff too, right? Like I'd be walking out to Bible school, or I'd be walking out in the morning to go preach chapel for the school, and people would be like following me, like, missionary, we're really sick. And I was like, if you're walking and following me, it's probably not that bad. And God had to get a hold of me halfway through this last term, right? If you have that good thing in your hand and you deny it to somebody, man, like you're not being a good Christian either. And I'm going, okay, where's the balance between this? Because these people, right, I would do it too if I was in their spot, right? Why would you go to somebody who's a maybe and maybe they're out of stock when you know that the guy who says he loves you and the guy who says he's here for you has that thing? I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had to learn how to balance all that too and be gracious. And sometimes sometimes I legitimately wasn't doing anything, just taking a little coffee break in the middle of the day, and someone would walk up and I'd go, yeah, all right, here's some ibuprofen, go drink a bunch of water, you'll get over your cold in a few days,
Yeah. It is a balance. It really is. I think doing ministry, you're always coming back to that baseline of, okay, there's always small adjustments you'll make, your whole life. It's
right.
like, back and forth. So no, that's awesome.
Well, and that's the thing, right? That back to why we're doing all these things, right? Kind of how you phrased it, missionary journeys. We're not just sitting in one spot, and we're not just dealing with one local church here or whatever our current church plan is. The reason for that is because of that, right?
Mhm.
Coming back to what should be happening with ministry. And Brother Wells is practiced at getting that from the Lord, and I'm learning how to do that. And that's why we have a clinic now. And that's why we got certain outreaches out of our church now in Cumiane, not just because it's the missionary thing to do, but God said go do this. Because there's dozens of opportunities. You can pick any of them up, but what one does God want you to do? And where's the impact going to be? Because I can throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at New Guinea and make people happier and even give them better lives. But ultimately, we're going for a spiritual effect at the end of the day.
Right.
And, sometimes the road to that is through physical means. Absolutely. I mean, right before we left, there's a 3-month-old girl that got, little baby girl that got pneumonia. She's starting to hyperventilate because her lungs are filling with fluid and like she's taking super quick breaths. And man, I took her to the hospital myself. Basically, anything the rest of that day is done because I've got to drive 2.5 hours, get them checked in, make sure everything's happening, and then either pay for them to be on ward or take them back to a guest house and say, here's some food money, here's some Good Samaritan story level of, all right, your room's taken care of, food's taken care of, just get better, take this medicine and come back when you're done. And, that lady and that little girl live next door to our church. And half our church walks by her front door on the way to church. And I'm going, all right, we helped her, right? That's what you want to do. Hopefully that'll lead to spiritual benefit. But if at the end of the day, that little girl grows up and dies and goes to hell, ultimately that moment of helping her pneumonia, it's not worth what I want it to be worth. I won't say it's worthless. I won't say it's a waste of time.
You were the witness,
Yep.
That's all we can be is the witness.
Right. But when you start seeing, right, there's a war on, right? Yeah. And there's an urgency to this, then you go, I want this medicine, this cheap medicine to mean so much more. Yeah. And you start praying for that and you start looking for opportunities for that and launching out and doing more because people are dying. They're going to hell. Yeah,
it's true. No, that's really great. It's really great. Well, we'll probably wrap it up, but we could do several more of these, I'm sure. But you leave tonight or tomorrow or something?
Yeah, we leave tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. Awesome. Well, we'll have to, maybe one of these days if I make it over there, I'll bring my little setup. We'll do another one.
We'll do on location.
We'll do on location. Oh, that'll be fun. But no, thanks for being on the podcast. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah. If you're back in the area again, I'm sure we'll do it again. We'll get updates. But for all the listeners, thank you for listening to the podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.